So today we're going to extend what we did on Monday when we're writing equations of lines. Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be given a point slope equation. Write the equation in slope-intercept form. This is the basis of everything that we're going to do today is off of this idea that using a point slope form, convert that over to slope-intercept form. Okay, so if we're going to do that, what is point slope form? All right, so there's point slope form. That's what it looks like. You got all those extra numbers in there. Slope-intercept, let's abbreviate that, y equals mx plus b. That's that slope-intercept we've been using for years. I've been using that since 7th grade probably. Okay, so the idea, what's the difference in this equation and that equation? This one has coordinate in it. This one has what by itself? Y by itself. This one has got something over there with y. So the idea is we're going to take something that's in this form and get y by itself, and then we'll be in slope-intercept form. So just using algebra to do that. Okay. So let's start with example A, and we're going to be given something in point slope form like y minus 5 equals 2 parentheses x minus 4. That's point slope form, exactly how it is up here. We've just filled in the y value, y1, the slope, and the x1. So if we were given an equation that's in point slope form, let's get it in slope-intercept form. So thinking about order of operations and how things work with that, what should be the first step in getting y by itself, Emily? Parentheses. So we got some parentheses here. What's going on with this 2 on the outside of that? Multiplying. So get rid of that. Multiplying 2 times x and 2 times negative 4. What property is that? Distributive property. So we're distributing the 2 to the parentheses. That should be the first step every time you're converting something from point slope form into slope-intercept form. Should always do that distributive property first. So that's going to give us 2x minus 8 on that side. And still just y minus 5 on the left-hand side. Okay. Then we're one step away from having y by itself. If I add 5 to both sides, what do I add it to on the right-hand side? The 8. So these cancel out. There's y by itself. 2x is still there. What's negative 8 plus 5? Negative 3. Is that slope-intercept form? Yeah, what part's the slope? The 2 in front of the x. And then what is the negative 3? Y-intercept. So we've taken something from point slope form into slope-intercept form. And that makes that, if we had to graph it, we'll get there eventually, much easier to do because we've graphed with slope-intercept form quite a bit. You have in 8th grade. We've done it some in here back before fall break. Let's look at another example. Let's say we had y plus 7 equals negative 3 parentheses x minus 2. Just throwing some signs, some negative signs in there, nothing really major. Okay. Take that a minute. All right. So what's the first step? Distributive property. That should always be your first step. So we're going to distribute the negative 3 to both of those pieces. What's that going to give us? Y plus 6. Double negative there. -3 times a -2 is a +6. So that's y plus 7 on that side still. One more step. Subtract 7. Why are we subtracting 7? Because it was a plus, so we would do the opposite of that. And again, to the like term on the other side, that gets us y by itself. -3x. And then what's the other part? -1. Plus -1 would have been the same thing. I would take either. This is the most common way of writing that. Yeah.
You can't change slope-intercept back from slope.
If you do, you don't know what point you're going to. You could use the y-intercept as the point. Like if you know, like here we know the y-intercept is -1. You could have y plus 1 equals -3 x minus 0. That's the same thing, but that really, since -1 is the y-intercept, it really means slope-intercept form is the right way to do that. So no, we're not going to work on a skill where we're taking something from slope-intercept form and putting it back in point-slope form. No, that's not one of the things we'll do. You're going to always go from point-slope form to slope-intercept, not the other way. Do another one. Say we had y minus 8 equals -5 x plus 7. And again, we're just trying to put this in slope-intercept form. What do we do first? Distribute. The -5 goes to both of those pieces. What does that give us? -5x minus 35. And then the y minus 8 hadn't changed. We hadn't done anything to that side yet. Now what? Plus 8 on that side. We plus 8 to what on the other side? Yeah, the -35. Like terms. Got to put them together. That's y by itself. -5x doesn't change. What's -35 plus 8? -27. And there we have slope-intercept form for that. When they give you the point-slope form already, really it's 2 steps and you're in slope-intercept form. The distributive property and then move whatever's over there with y and you're in slope-intercept form. Okay. It ain't that easy all the time. We're going to step it up a little bit as we go here. All right. So the next thing that could happen is that they give you a point and the slope and right, and then they say then write the equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, so we're given a point and the slope. We're going to write it in slope-intercept form. So if we're given a point and a slope, that should tell us what form to start with. Given a point and a slope should mean we're going to what form? Point slope. So we've got to make the point slope equation first. Okay, so that would be, let's say it has slope of 6 through 1, 7 is our ordered pair. Okay. So this is taking what we did on Monday, the skill we had Monday, where we're given a point and a slope, and put it in point slope form first. Then we're going to work from that point slope form and go to slope intercept form. So remember point slope form, just to reiterate, have that memorized. I'm not sure that they're going to give that to you on the end of course test. I know they won't give it to you on the ACT that you'll have to take eventually. So if you'll know it now, you're going to be good. All right. So where does the 6 go in this problem? Where it's the slope, so it goes for the m, right? So beside the parentheses right there in front. And then what goes over here with the y? 7. So it's y minus 7 equals 6 parentheses x minus 1. So here's our point slope equation like we did on Monday. Got the slope, the point, x, and y. Now we want to write it in slope-intercept form. That's what we just did 3 times just a second ago. What do we do first? Distributive property. That's 6x minus 6, y minus 7. Last step, add 7. 6x plus 1. Negative 6 plus 7, positive 1. There's our slope-intercept form of a line that goes through 1, 7 with a slope of 6. What other point do we know that this line goes through? We know it goes through 1, 7, but what does this tell us it also goes through? What's the ordered pairs for that? It's the y-intercept of 1. What's the ordered pair for a y-intercept? 0, 1. 0 is the x value, 1 is the y value. So we really do have 2 points that we know it goes through. The one they gave us, and then we found that y-intercept. We know it goes through that as well. Kind of extending the question a little bit there. Let's do another one. Let's say that it has a slope of 2/3 through negative 9, 4. Throwing a fraction in there and a negative sign. Okay. So what's the point slope equation going to be? Good. Y minus 4. So y minus the y value, x minus the x value. And the slope goes in front of the parentheses. What happens there with the double negative in the, it turns to positive. I'm okay with you skipping that, writing it with the double negative and just going to x plus 9 in there. You started out with that, what that second line says. I'm fine with that. Skipping that double negative stuff. What's the first step? All right, we're distributing what? 2/3, a fraction to both of those pieces. The easy part is to distribute it to x, because 2/3 times x is just 2/3 x. There's nothing you can do to that. But then we got to do 2/3 times 9. What's 2/3 of 9? 6. Works out nice on this one, because it's 2/3 times 9 over 1, and that's 18 over 3. 18 over 3 is 6. It reduces nicely. Always make sure you reduce any fractions, especially on that step right there is where it's going to happen. Okay, and then we got y minus 4. What's the last step? Add 4 to the 6 over here. 2/3 x plus 10. So the y-intercept is 10 on that. Slope of 2/3, y-intercept of 10, also goes through negative 9, 4. So starting with your point slope and working to a slope-intercept form, you've just got to make the point slope form. Let's do one more of those. Let's do another one with a fraction in it. Slope of negative 7 over 6 through excuse me, let's do 5, negative 3. Remember, the toughest one we've done so far. What do we start with? Okay, the point slope form is what we start with. So we're going to start with y plus 3. Why is it plus 3 and not minus 3? Double negative there. It's y minus negative 3. So that's why it's plus 3. And then what goes next? All right, good. So negative 7, 6 is your slope. So that goes in front of the parentheses. X minus 5 inside there because the x value is 5. Okay. Now what? Distribute. So I'm distributing negative 7 over 6 to x, and then negative 7 over 6 times 5. So, you know, at somewhere I'm doing negative 6 times, or negative 7 over 6 times negative 5 over 1. 35 over 6. And that doesn't reduce any. Don't make it a mixed number. Do not make it a decimal. Okay? Leave it as a fraction. You would think about it as a mixed number, as a decimal. If you were going to plot it, you would think about it as a mixed number or decimal. But when we're writing our equation, we don't want mixed numbers or decimals at this point. Okay? What's the last step? Minus 3, right? So we're subtracting 3 from 35 over 6. You can use a calculator to do that, but if you didn't have a calculator, you can do it by thinking about it as 3 over 1 and then saying, okay, the common denominator for those two would be 6, right? So I'd multiply top and bottom by 6. So that converts that over to 18 over 6. So we have 35 over 6 minus 18 over 6, which is 17 over 6. So we have negative 7 over 6x plus 17 over 6 as the slope-intercept form of that. So if you were going to graph this, you would need to think, okay, 17 over 6 is 2 and 5/6, so it's almost 3. That's where you would start at, and then you would count down 7 over 6 if you were going to graph that. And we'll get some practice doing that next week with the graphing involved too. Goal this week is writing equations. Okay. All right, so fractions make it a little tougher. You do get the luxury of using a calculator to help you do those fractions. That stuff over here is, what if I didn't have a calculator? What would I do? I'm fairly certain on the end of course test, they're not going to ask you to do one with that ugly fraction stuff on the non-calculator portion. I don't think they're going to be that bad. All right, so given a point and the slope, writing it in slope-intercept form, starting with point-slope form and moving down into slope-intercept form. So not too bad. What do you guess the next thing is? Given 2 points. Given 2 points, write the equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so F, so we're on G. So they're going to say it goes through a couple of points. Let's say it's 6, 4, and 8, 10. Through those 2 points. Okay, if we're going to write this in slope-intercept form, we need what things? Do what now? We got to start with a point-slope equation. So to start with a point-slope equation, we need the slope. So the first thing that we would find is the slope using the slope formula. Just like we did on Monday when we were writing an equation in point-slope form using given 2 points. Okay, so we got to find the slope first. So y values on top, 10 minus 4. X values on the bottom, 8 minus 6. Remember, they got to be in order. Order pairs got to match up vertically. 10 and 8 got to be together. 4 and 6 got to be together. Can't mix and match. Got to be in order. 10 minus 4, 6. 8 minus 6, 2. Does that reduce? Makes 3. The slope is 3. Okay. So this is our slope. Now, what do I do next to write it in point slope form? Yeah, use one of the points. Doesn't matter which one I use. No, pick the one you think's the easiest. I'm going to pick 6, 4 because it's smaller numbers. No real reason to do that. If you want to use the second one, you can. Just pick one of the ordered pairs, and it's back to examples D, E, and F. It's the same thing. Once you find the slope, pick an ordered pair. Y minus 4 equals 3, parentheses, x minus 6. That's the point slope form if I use 6, 4. I'm going to write over here on the side, what if I used 8, 10? Y minus 10 is 3, x minus 8. Okay. Either of those is correct for the point slope form. The next thing to do is get y by itself. So no matter which ordered pair you use, what do you do next? Distribute it across the parentheses with the 3. So that's 3x minus 18 here. If I did the other one, it'd be 3x minus 24. You do not have to do both of them. I'm showing both of them because I want you to see something at the end here. You don't have to do both of them. All right, the last step for this one would be add 4. That's y equals 3x minus 14, right? That's the slope-intercept form. On the other one, what's the last step? You got to add 10 to the 24, negative 24. What does it end up with, though? The exact same equation. So yesterday, when we were doing these, or Monday, when we were doing these problems, you had, different answers on your point slope form depending on which ordered pair you used. Today, since we're going for slope-intercept form at the end, doesn't matter which ordered pair you use, you should end up with the same equation, no matter which ordered pair you use. Okay, that's the great thing about slope-intercept form is it doesn't matter which ordered pair you pick, as long as you put them in the right spot, you're going to end up with the same slope-intercept form, no matter which one you use. Okay. So, like I said, you don't have to do both. Just pick one, but it doesn't matter which one you pick. Okay. Let's do another one. Through -7, +2, and -8, 3. So the first thing we should do. Plus positive. 2 negatives make positive. So 3 minus 2 is 1. -8 plus +7 would be -1. So the slope is just -1. Okay. So that's just setting up the slope formula. Y2 minus Y1, X2 minus X1. So we know the slope is -1. Which ordered pair do we want to use? First one's fine. Neither one's any easier than the other one. So just pick one. So y minus 2 equals -1. And then what's in the parentheses? Or x plus 7. Yeah, let's go ahead and make it x plus 7 because of the double negative there. Okay. Now what? Distribute. What are we distributing here? -1. So it's just going to change the signs of everybody in the parentheses. So it's -x. Technically, if you wrote a -1 in front of that, it's not wrong. I wouldn't count it wrong at all. That's correct. But I'm just going to write -x minus 7. And then here we got y minus 2. What's the next thing to do there? Add 2. And y by itself, -x. What's -7 plus 2? Minus 5. There's an understood 1 in front of that x. You don't have to write it. It's a -1 in that case, but the negative sign's got to be there, whether the 1 is or not. And there we have slope-intercept form. Given 2 points. Always reduce that fraction when you find your slope if it will. If it won't, leave it the fraction. Remember, if it's negative on top and negative on bottom, it turns into what? Positive. Make sure you do that with that, and you're going to be fine. So very straightforward stuff. We're going from point slope form into slope intercept form today.